I'm Natasha Gambrell, and this is my mom.
Valerie Gambrell.
We're both members of the Eastern Pequot Tribal Nation. We both serve on our tribal council as well. I've been on council for, I think this is my second or third term. My mom's been on for almost
20 years.
very long time, 20 years or so. And today we're here to talk to you just a little bit about our tribe, give you some information. I am also a teacher. I teach at St. Bernard's High School in Uncasville, Connecticut. I've been in education for 3 or 4 years. I'm an English teacher, high school English teacher, but yeah. So our story, oh, there we go. Figured out how to make it work. Should have known that. All right. So this is the first slide that I have. On this, it's an older picture of our tribal council. But one thing we always like to kind of point out is, if you'll notice, is there's always a lot of women. We hold women in high regards in our community, and they're looked at as leaders. So a lot of our tribal council are women, although we do have some men too, but large amount of women on our tribal council. So we're going to start with the Pequot War. So the Pequot Nation was large and powerful on the East Coast. They were in control of the fur and otter trade. At the time, our grand sachem was Tannenbaum, and Tannenbaum was killed by the English. At this point, Sassacus believed that he should lead the Pequots, while Uncas is another Pequot who believed that he should ally with the white men, whereas Sassacus believed that we needed to fight against the encroaching of the white men, or them encroaching in on us. So I have two pictures of them. I think Sassacus is on one side, Uncas is on the other side. So basically, this slide is very long, and I'm going to tell you guys how the way that I was taught it, as opposed to kind of just going through this big slide. The way that I was taught it by my elders was that it was hunting season, and a lot of the men were out. So the village was full with a lot of women and children. And what happened was the Mohegan and the Narragansetts, they allied with the English and the Dutch to get rid of the Pequots, or to destroy the Pequots in their attempt. So what they did was they aligned outside of our village, and they burned it to the ground. Only, I believe, how many got away? 10%? Only 10% of us got away. And the next slide will kind of talk about what happened with those 10% that did get away. So this is just an image of the fort and what the fort would look like. So the results of the Pequot massacre were the loss of freedom for the Pequots, the loss of identity for the Pequots, and the disposition of land. We were also sold into slavery to the Mohegans and to the Narragansetts, and some of us were sent over to Bermuda as well. So you still have Pequots that are currently in Bermuda because of this action. So I know I talk super fast too, so if I'm talking too fast, slow me down. It's been a long day too at work. So if I'm talking a little fast, slow me down. My kids tell me I talk fast all the time, so I'm kind of used to it. So where do we go from the Pequot War? Our reservation was established in 1683. Do you want to kind of take over from there, please?
It was established in 1683, and what happened was the Pequots that were sold into slavery kept running back up to Lambton Hill. So the King of England deeded us this reservation, and there's been somebody living on that reservation since that time.
And I do want to say there are so many close ties that everybody's story is different, and it's okay for everybody's story to be different. There's things that we believe happened, whereas other tribes may not believe that they happened in the same way or the same manner. So I just kind of want to state that too. So since 1683, like my mom said, the Eastern Pequots have continually occupied our ancestral land that was deeded to us by the King of England. It is one of the oldest continuously occupied reservations in the state, the country. Right. Shortly afterwards, the tribe was split into 3 fractions by the United States government. The 3 fractions were the Eastern Pequot, the Western Pequot, and the Pawcatuck Eastern Pequot. And then in 2000, the Eastern Pequots and the Pawcatucks merged per the state of Connecticut and for the federal recognition process, which we will get into, or my mom will kind of dive into a little bit later on in this presentation. So what's kind of next? For me, I would be very remiss if I didn't talk about the Pequot woman. I wouldn't be the person that I am today without these strong Pequot women that kept us going. So on this slide, you'll see there's a document. It's Mary Mamaho, which we'll talk about her in another one of the slides that I have coming up. Then I have a picture in the middle where my cursor is of Marcia Flowers, who was a longtime chair of the Eastern Pequot Tribal Nation and has taught me everything I know. And then the last one on the other side, who recently passed away, was Agnes Cunha, who was part of our Pawcatuck fraction, Eastern Pequot and Pawcatuck fraction, but she taught me a lot as well too. So I think it's important that we kind of say their names and we mention them when we do talk about our history because they are such important people to us.
Right.
So first one I want to talk about is Mary Mamaho. Mary Mamaho was the daughter of the Eastern Pequot sachem Mamaho, who took over after Sassacus. She married Isaiah Uncas, and then after that, after he died, she married Ninigrit, who was Narragansett. Their royal marriage ended in violence. That's kind of a long story if you want to dive into it a little bit more, but I'll leave the slide up so you guys can kind of read it because I don't want to just read off the slide verbatim, but it kind of gives a little bit more as to what happened to her. Sadly, her story ended very tragic. She ended up getting killed by another Pequot when they found out that they were angry with Mary. So, but the thing that makes Mary so important is, from what I've been told, is that Mary was one of the reasons that we're here today. She continued to go up to Hartford and petition on behalf of the tribe to let people know that we were here and to continue to protect our reservation. She's also a super important person because she shows the community ties that we have with the other tribes. She shows the intertribal marriages, the first of many, I would say.
Yeah.
So the next one we have is Hannah Okush. My mom will kind of talk a little bit about Hannah.
Hannah Okush was hung in New London. She was 12 years old. The story is that she got into an argument with the daughter of the person that she worked for, and they said that she killed her. Hannah was also mentally disabled. So what they did was they ended up hanging her. She was the youngest person ever to be hung in the United States.
Because it was before COVID, what we were doing to kind
of. Prior to COVID, we were going to do a mock trial, and they were going to exonerate her because there's a lot of questions, and people believe that it was the young men, young boys that were there that actually did it, and not Hannah herself.
So again, we do mention these women's name to keep their spirits alive and to let people know what happened to them. So then one of the last ones we'll talk about too is Catherine Garrett. My mom kind of expand on that one too as well.
Catherine Garrett worked for Reverend William Worthington, and she was pregnant, and they believe that she killed her baby. She went into the barn, she had the baby, but people believe that it was the children that actually killed the baby and not her. She never said who the baby's father was, and it was believed that it was the Reverend William Worthington. And her brother was supposed to come and get the baby and take him back up to the reservation, but unfortunately that never happened, and they ended up hanging her also.
So we can see that even after the Pequot War, what continuously happens to a lot of Eastern Pequots through the hands of the white man, unfortunately. So, this is a big one. So my mom, I'm going to tag her in on this one too, even though I know she's a little winded. We're going to tag her in on this one too. So after we talked about these people, we're kind of going to move a little bit forward into where we are presently today. So where are the Eastern Pequots today? We'll talk a little bit about federal recognition and the process of federal recognition and our experience with federal recognition and kind of where we are in the aftermath of that today. So federal recognition, I'm pretty sure you guys are all familiar with the process and what federal recognition is, but just to say it, it's the acknowledgement process that Indigenous people have to go through to prove that they are, in fact, Native. Although it is ironic that Indigenous people have to prove who they are after first contact, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. All right, so if you want to get into when we first filed and all that kind of stuff.
We first filed in 1970, and we were heard Okay, in this process, you have to have a positive preliminary and a positive final. So even though we filed in the 70s, we weren't heard. We got a positive preliminary in 2000. We had a positive final in 2002. And we were the first tribe ever in the history of the United States to have our recognition taken away from us. In 2005, on a rainy Columbus Day, we received a fax that came down that said, sorry, we're taking it back. 50% of the towns that appealed from us were from Fairfield County, not even here. Once that happened in 2006, the BIA would not let us address any of the issues that they said was wrong with our petition. They would not allow us to do that. In 2015, the Connecticut, well, the government decided they were going to revamp the regulations, which we were happy about because we thought, okay, once they revamped, because you couldn't use at the time you couldn't use a reservation. There was a bunch of things that you couldn't do. So in 2015, they changed. But however, Connecticut was so powerful, they were able to put a band in that said, if you ever previously applied, you can never apply again without permission from the state, which we knew we weren't going to get that. And in 2017, however, the state decided they're going to do it was going to allow another casino to come in. But unfortunately, well, it never happened. It never happened. But the whole time that we were denied our recognition, we know that it was highly political. We know that the state of Connecticut did not want a third casino. And our argument was who we are had nothing to do with any of that. But Connecticut was that powerful that they were able to do that. And we're still fighting this battle today.
And just to kind of go off of what she's talking about too, she mentioned on October 12, 2005. Well, on October 12, 2005, the United States government said the Eastern Pequot ceased to exist. Gone, kaput, just like that, a figment of your imagination. Another tribe thought to be wiped from the history books. The state of Connecticut was that powerful. I was 13 years old when that happened. And a lot of people don't like when I say this, but I will say it. It was a genocide. That's what they did to us. They performed a paper, bloodless genocide on us. And again, a lot of people don't like when we say that, but that's what happened. At 13, I can remember going home that day and turning the news on. And it was the then Attorney General, Richard Blumenthal, who stated this was one of the greatest days in Connecticut state history. Those words burned like salt in a wound. Those are things that you don't ever come back from. So just, I know when we talk about this sometimes, we're really, really passionate and come across as angry. And some of it is we are angry that we're still in this fight and have to continue to fight this fight. Like she mentioned, they never said we weren't who we say we are. They were, what are the two? Do you remember the two they said that we didn't meet?
Continuous government, which wasn't true.
Because they allowed other tribes to say that they use sewing circles, but they would not allow us to say that we use sewing circles.
Yeah, right. Some tribes, the BIA actually came down and helped them to write or fix their petition. We were not afforded that same opportunity.
The other one was the family ties, right?
Right.
They said that we weren't able to show a connection between
Williams.
the Williamses, but we in fact do. I know that my family line is one of those lines that is a connector between the eastern side and the Pawcatuck side, because we come from the Fagan and the Randall line as well.
Well, what they failed to, or what they chose not to look at, was that women get married. So there, yes, there wasn't actually a line that said, that name, but it's because the women were married, so they carried different names.
So that's kind of like a blanket overview, but I think the most important thing is to think about how that political influence played such a big role in our federal recognition. One thing that my mom says when we go to schools all the time and we talk about our history, my mom always says, us today, what?
You tomorrow.
So if they can easily get us today, then they can come after you tomorrow. And we see that with women's rights. We see that with a bunch of things. So just kind of making students aware of that, like us today, you tomorrow. It happened to us, it could easily happen to you. Do I know anything else about that? So the next part, my mom had mentioned earlier. I don't think we mentioned it. My mom works for DCF, Department of Children and Families, for the longest. So I'll let her take this piece too about ICWA.
Um, prior, the law just recently changed, and unfortunately, they haven't caught up to it yet. But for the prior to this, state recognized tribes were not afforded the same opportunity as federal tribes. ICWA didn't apply to us. So a lot of our children were taken and put into foster care or adopted out. Our our current tribal chairman, that happened to him. And he was in his late 20s when he found out about that he was Eastern Pequot. And what makes it so difficult is when people get adopted, the birth certificate changes. So it's not an easy thing to trace back to your original birth certificate. However, now the law has just changed, like I said, but the state hasn't quite caught up to it yet. But at least that's a big step, especially for the state recognized tribes.
Yeah, and I think it's super important because my mom has always taught me too that our greatest resources are our elders and our children. The elders tell the story and the youth keeps it, or the children keep the story alive. So when you take those kids away, we're losing pieces of our history, we're losing pieces of who we are. So it's just important that we mention there's a lot of things that come with federal recognition. I don't want to sit here and make this the federal recognition show, but it's played such an impact on our journey or our tribe that, like, I'd be very remiss if I didn't talk so much about this and what happened when they took it away. As far as like elders sick and dying, youth suffering ambition and uninspired, just different things like that. Not having access to mental health resources, not having access to healthcare resources. We've lost so many people in this fight. We've lost so many elders that it's unbelievable.
Correct.
So I'm not going to play this poem, but I'll have it attached so that you guys can watch it at some point if you want. I do write poetry, and I did write this poem a while ago about the day that they took away our federal recognition and what that meant for me, the things that I saw that day, the things that I heard that day, and how that had such a great impact on me as a person. All right. So on a lighter note, I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about our archaeology program because it's super important to me and it's something that's near and dear to my heart. We have a collaboration with UMass Boston. They come out every summer. They've been coming out since, I want to say, 2000. Yeah. So about 23 years or so that we worked with them, and we've gone through different spots on the reservation and done archaeology, found different homesteads, found different things that were super important. I think the best thing that I've ever found, because I've done archaeology for years, was we found a key with a rusted lock in it. And to me, that was just so powerful because it was at a time where everything around us was falling apart and they were saying that we weren't who we say we were, but that lock kept me going. To see that after all those years and how it stayed intact, I knew that I could continue this battle that we were facing. So another thing too, when I mentioned archaeology, I would be very remiss if I didn't mention Bobby Sebastian, who is over here where my cursor is. I could say so many things about him, but he's the one that taught us the love for the land. He's the one that taught us everything we kind of know about the land and every aspect of it. So I'd be very remiss if I didn't mention him. He was part of the archaeology program for quite some time, but he passed away. The other person I have to mention is Ralph Sebastian. He worked over at Mashantucket as well doing archaeology. He's a large part of the reason that as younger kids got involved in archaeology because we saw him doing it and he made it cool at a time where a lot of us were broken. It really kept us going. So I always have to kind of mention this program. And there's a video on YouTube too that I can link where we have tribal members talking about some of the things we found and the impact that it has made on our community. So what's happened since our federal recognition has been taken away? Well, we're still working to regain what's rightfully ours. Although there's limited membership participation, limited funds, and all council positions are volunteer, we still have a powwow every year on the fourth Sunday of July. We continue to have both council and membership meetings alike. We still run programs. We ran the Native Eyes program a couple years back, and we also run our warrior race a couple of years back as well. Is there anything else you can add to that?
Once the federal recognition was taken away, that blow has been really difficult to come back from. Like Nikki said, we have a lot of members that kind of gave up, but then there's a few of us diehards that refuse to give up, and that will continue to fight and fight till we can't fight anymore until we're done. I mean, I am tired. I've been on this council for 20 years. We don't get paid. Everything is volunteer, and it's really hard to run something, you know, in the afternoon or 3 hours. We're not in an office. We don't have an office because we don't have any money. We don't have any funds. I don't know how we do what we do sometimes. The powwow, it's a traditional powwow. We don't do dancing. We don't pay
Right.
money.
We don't do competition dance.
But we feed everybody. We manage to feed everybody. We drum. And a lot of people come home for that. But for the most part, we are still suffering. We're still trying to get our members back. It was difficult. You know, everybody, we had it. It was ours. We know who we are. And then all of a sudden, overnight, kind of like it was snatched. And it's never, ever, ever happened before. So I guess we have the distinction of being the first tribe to get it and then have it taken away. But it really, historical trauma is real. And we definitely have it. And we continue to have it. We continue to try to bring our members back. But like I said, it's difficult with no money. Our councils all volunteers. Our committees are all volunteer. Everything is volunteer. No one is getting paid for anything. And but we have the committed people. The few, I don't care if it's 5, I don't care if we're going to continue to fight this fight because we know who we are. We know who we are. We know what we deserve. And we deserve our federal recognition. And it's really difficult. And one thing, like, nobody has to prove this is our country. Nobody else has to prove. If you say you're Italian, nobody says prove it. If you say, you know, you're whatever you say you want to be, nobody's asking you. I have a card that has a roll number on it.
And I have mine tattooed on my finger as a reminder. I have my roll number. It's kind of hard to see, but as a reminder, like she said, it's been a very tough fight, and it's very hard at times to stay alive and even let people know that we're still here. And I think that's our biggest goal, is to let people know that we're still here. And we're very grateful and glad that we are starting this with the education piece and allowing people to kind of learn our history. Because a lot of times when you think about the state of Connecticut, they've left our tribe voiceless. They left the Schaghticoke voiceless. They left the Golden Hill Paugussets voiceless. A lot of times we're not mentioned, we're forgotten. So any opportunity that we have to speak our truth, to tell our story, is amazing to us. I do want to inform you guys of our powwow. You all are welcome to attend. It is the 4th Sunday in July. I think that's the 28th specifically. I think that's 28th, but I know it's the 4th Sunday in July. Like she mentioned before, we feed everybody. Yeah, so it's a one-day powwow. It's only the 28th, because on the 27th we conduct our business where we have our voting, our meeting, and all the things like that. But on the 28th, we do have our powwow. Our grand entry is at 12. Our reservation is off of Wrights Road. You'll see flyers for it, signs for it. If you're interested in coming up there, we would love to have you guys up there and actually be able to experience the Eastern Pequots.
To see. Desolate. It is.
It's tough, but to see the land and to see who we are as a people, and maybe why we're so prideful and why we continue this fight for our people, because we don't really have any other choice.
No.
And then just to end on a more positive note, I just included some pictures of myself. I do Eastern blanket dance. I've been dancing since I was about 7, 8 years old, something that I continue to do. So just some of those pictures. And then on the next slide, I have a picture of me and my mom, even though my mom hates that picture completely. But me and my mom always do everything together. My mom is my best friend. I made her come today, even though she's retired, didn't really want to do it, but we made her come today, and I'm glad that she did, because she gives us a different perspective. My mom had mentioned the tribal cards as well. You can see my tribal card right up here. Then I have that roll number 980 tattooed. Is there anything else that you kind of want to say that we didn't cover, or just kind of to let people know where we're at?
I think thanks for this opportunity for us to speak. And if anybody has any questions, they can send them to you. Um, this is really a difficult time for us. We, like I said, we continue to fight. Some of us are really tired, but we're not going to give up. No matter what the state of Connecticut does to us, we're going to continue to fight this fight. If you read more, you can read more about our history. You can see that we definitely, they never said that we weren't Native. They never said that. I think the biggest fear was another casino.
And I think,
And
that's controlling our own destiny.
Right.
That's a big part of
Right.
it too. Indigenous people being able to control what we do in our own destiny. I think that's a big part of it. One thing I want to say, as an educator, one thing that my mom had mentioned was that historical trauma. And those of you that are educators, I want you to think about what that might feel like when you are going over this history in class with some of these kids that are Connecticut natives, or even natives in general, or even Columbus Day, like she just mentioned, or Thanksgiving, or things like that, coming at it from a more sensitive point of view. One thing that I love to tell my students is that it's not my job to indoctrinate you, but it is my job to tell you both sides of the story. And you need to find the truth somewhere in the middle. And I believe that's completely accurate, especially when we're talking about this history, because for so long, we've only gotten one side of it. So to give kids both sides and let them find their truth in the middle, I think is the best approach to this. Go ahead.
I think also you need to be mindful on what you call Thanksgiving and what that means to the Native children that you might have in your class. For the majority of us, we do not celebrate Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was a day of thanks for massacring the Pequots. So we do Harvest Moon, but so when you do those holidays like Thanksgiving, please keep that in mind.
And if you want to Columbus Day, did you want to go into that too?
Columbus Day, I wouldn't even mention it if I could get away with that. But because that was a horrible time in history, and people don't know the real truth about Columbus. Columbus never came to America. The Italians didn't even like Columbus. But I digress. They didn't even like him. So to make a man erect statues and stuff to a man that was cruel and heartless, that did the things that he did, I wouldn't even mention if I could get away with not Columbus Day.
And I think another important thing to think about too when you're educating Indigenous kids is, I think back to my experiences in the classroom and how I felt invisible. So if you are going to talk about a specific tribe or specific tribes, it's always a good idea to maybe ask the kids. You may have a student that is Eastern Pequot or Mashantucket or Mohegan that wants to tell their history in a way that you may not be able to tell it. A wise Narragansett elder once told me that white folks can go to school all they want to study your history, but you have more knowledge in your pinky than they ever will of what it means to be Indigenous and what it is to walk in your shoes. So if you're ever in that position where there are kids in the classroom that are Eastern Pequot, Mashantucket, Mohegan, Golden Hills, Scottico, give them that opportunity, give them that microphone, give them the stage to be able to tell their story. I think that's a very important piece. I know when I was in school, when I went to Eastern Connecticut State University, and I was in college, and I took a Native American history class, the teacher told me that the Eastern Pequots no longer existed, that we were wiped out because of blood quantum. And this is back in what? I want to say 2012, maybe? So like just keeping that in mind and being cognizant of the things that you say and how they have an effect on Indigenous students. And like, just like we had mentioned, that blood trauma, keeping in mind what that does. And then I think one thing that we just want people to know specifically about our tribe is that
we're not going anywhere.
We're not. And we'll continue to fight and fight. I will take my dying breath on Lantern Hill if I have to. This fight is not for me. This fight is for the next 7 generations, so they do not have to experience the things that I've had to experience, the things that she's had to experience, the things that Mary Mama has had to experience. So we just want people to know that We're here, we remain, and we're not going anywhere. We're a proud people. And
We can be a great resource. If you are teaching the Native American history, you have a question, you have a comment, you want someone to come in to speak, we're always available.
yeah, I think so. I think that pretty much, I think we're a little ahead of time, but I think that pretty much wraps it up. I know we talked fairly quick, but I do want to say, Tabatne, Katapatush, thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us tell our story.